that the people that are behind the world government are aware of these things and have looked upon the ancient past and the past empires and kind of ponder upon, these empires collapsed, but what do we need to actually have it sustained, to not collapse, to have it perpetual, to be able to for it to continue? Do you think that is a possibility now with the scientific model and also with technology, of course?
Yes, well, they do think that. There's no question about it, and they say so, and they hold seminars and they write books on it, and they do think so. I don't think they're completely confident. I think there's a little bit of whistling in the dark that goes with that, but they sound very confident. But either way, whether they think it can be done or not, they're giving it the old try, and they're counting on it. And as I say, I don't think that it can be sustained, because I think somewhere along the line, the human spirit, no matter how conditioned it has been through chemicals and indoctrination and propaganda, no matter how conditioned it has been, I think it's something deep in the human spirit that well, at least hopefully, somewhere along the line, will come forth and throw all of this nonsense off.
I believe so too. Actually, I totally agree. Do you see a heightened, what should I say, interest, I guess, for research that favor the more conspiratorial view? Do you see that more young people are coming to these subjects, or is it on the same basic level as ever? Do you see any increasing interest?
Yes, I do, and I don't know quite what to make of it. I don't know whether this is a new trend or just a continuation of a long-term trend. I've often asked myself that question. I look back over the quite a few years that I have been following these events, and it seems to me that at every stage along the way, I recall saying to myself and to others that, yeah, I think there's a new awakening happening. I think more and more people are awakening. I can remember saying that 20 and 30, 40 years ago. So I have a feeling that it's a continuing process, or a worst-case scenario is that I'm just the eternal optimist, and it's no different now than it ever has been, but it just seems like it is. I don't know which is true, but I do know that today, with events involving international terrorism, and here in this country, that just one law after another coming down the line restricting our freedoms in the name of fighting terrorism or fighting drugs or fighting crime or fighting pornography or fighting something they have all these terrible imaginary, these monsters, these mental monsters out there that we must fight and destroy. And so that convinces us to, as I said before, the captives become content with their captivity, because after all, we're protecting ourselves against all these terrible things.
That's right.
And they actually become grateful for the fact that these laws are taking away our freedom, because they see that as a form of security against these horrible things.
Exactly. I mean, a terrified mind or a fearful mind or even spirit is going to cling on to the whatever handrails that are given to the people, and through these measures, as I say, like terrorism or whatever in this case, among other things, the surveillance society, and even to some extent, a microchipped population or what have you, can actually be justified. It feels like.
Well, that's the whole idea, and I know there's no longer any doubt in my mind that many of the problems that we have in society that are so frightening have, if not been totally engineered, have been encouraged by these people. They've tried to make them worse so that the the fear factor will be greater. And you see that all the time. Once you get that perspective, you can see that we're constantly being warned about some, I just use terrorism as an example. They're always thwarting some kind of a terrorist attack, even though the attack doesn't happen, but they thwarted it. And then we find out years later that these guys that they say were the terrorists were some kind of stumble bums, didn't know what the hell they were doing, and probably were on the payroll of the government secret agencies in the first place, and so that the whole thing is contrived for the fear factor.
Yeah.
And once you understand the game they're playing, you can see it. you can see traces of it everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, 9/11 is a prime example of this, considering all the research that has been done on this subject. And do you think events like 9/11 actually help to expose the hidden agenda in the long run?
Well, they both, yes, they help to expose it, but at the same time they advance it.
Yeah.
So you've got that dual problem, or the dual quality of it. In fact, that takes it back to your question. Are we seeing an increased awareness? And I think, yes, we really are, because the plan is unfolding so much more rapidly now and more visibly that you have to be pretty brain dead not to see what's going on.
That's right.
So the only thing left is to decide: is this a natural event? Is this just because of somebody over there in the Middle East hates freedom in some other country? Is that really what's causing all this? And if so, why didn't it happen 100 years ago or 50 years ago, when we had a lot more freedom? They would have hated us more then, but instead, no, we had good relations in those days.
That's right.
So the only thing left is for people to decide: is this happening because of forces that are just random and out of control, or is it kind of a master plan? Are people trying to make this happen?
Yeah,
that's the only thing left.
That's right. So the situation that we find ourselves in today, is it somewhere, can we backtrack here a little bit and connect this, for example, with the research that you have done in your book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, and also, of course, in your film, The Capitalist Conspiracy, considering that, we actually are now in this situation where we actually have, the money system, and we have a history of, how should I say, the takeover of society and going from freedom into a more, fascist type global society. Do you think that the main root of the problem, or the main root of the problem goes back to the economical system and the research that you did when you first wrote your book, The Creature from Jekyll Island?
I think the root, the tap root of the problem is not the economic system. I think the economic system is more like the trunk that holds the tree up, but the root that nourishes it, I think, is an ideology. It's a concept that many people get that grows out of their arrogance, out of their egos. It's the concept they get that they say to themselves, well, I'm very privileged, I'm very smart, and I'm grateful for that. But that gives me an obligation to rule society, because those other people out there are stupid. They don't know what they're doing, and they're probably going to injure themselves if left to their own resources. So we can't really give them freedom, because you understand that this is for their own good. Somebody has to rule and tell them what to do, and I guess that's my job, because I'm so smart. And I'm grateful for that, but it's my obligation, so I must rule, and I must deceive those people for their own good in order to make the world a better place in which to live. And that's the underlying ego basis of megalomania, really. The people want to rule other people.
Yeah.
And in their own minds, they justify it, not just because of being power-hungry, although some of them are like that. I think most of them say that they try and justify, saying, well, it's necessary. Somebody has to do it. It might as well be us.
Yeah.
So I think that's the taproot, the idea that there are social engineers out there, and these are the collectivists, who are going to get all society organized into this super state, and that they will rule the state for the benefit of mankind.
Do you think that
taproot?
Do you think that this has happened because people haven't taken personal responsibility, meaning that they have, in a sense, actually allowed this to happen? Is that a possibility?
I think they'd like to say that, and they utilize the fact that many people do not assume responsibility. But the fact is that many people do assume responsibility, and the elitists are determined to run their lives also.
Yeah.
They don't want to make any exceptions. They'll say, well, if you rule your life responsibly, how do we define that? We define that as you rule your life in exactly the fashion that I think you should rule it. And if you don't rule it in that fashion, then you're not responsible, and we define the word responsible, you see.
Yeah.
So they're willing, theoretically, they're willing to give people freedom to act, only so long as they act in exactly the way in which they say they should act. And if they don't do that, then they take away their freedom, which means they never had freedom to act in the first place. See?
Yeah.
That's how that works.
Yeah, definitely. I see what you mean. You know, let's dive in a little bit and talk about your book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. I'm very interested in hearing, if you will, a little bit on the background story on it. How did you come upon this research first, and when was this, and you know, how did the book come about, so to speak?
Yes, I think that's a good part of this total picture, because I mentioned a moment ago that the ideology of collectivism is the taproot, and the financial structure was the trunk of the tree. So now we're talking about, in America, we're talking about the Federal Reserve System, which is the trunk of the banking and monetary system in this country. And so The Creature from Jekyll Island is all about the Federal Reserve in the United States. And the title of the book is a little misleading, or I should say confusing, for some people, because they think, well, what's the creature got to do with it? And they think maybe it's like the creature from the Black Lagoon, or it sounds like it might be a sequel to Jurassic Park.
Yeah, see what you mean.
And I had a little fun with that idea. I toyed with it, thinking, golly, maybe if somebody were walking by a bookstore and they saw this book in the window, they'd go in and buy it, thinking they were going to get that kind of a story.
But it is a horror story, I guess.
It is a horror story, and
Yeah.
it is a creature, but it really has meaning. It wasn't just a clever little title, because Jekyll Island is a real island, and it's off the coast of Georgia here in the United States. It's on the east coast of the United States. And it was on that island back in 1910 that the Federal Reserve System was created. It was a privately owned island, and it was owned by a small group of billionaires from New York City, people like J.P. Morgan and William Rockefeller and their business and social associates. It was a beautiful place. It was where the families went to spend the cold winter months. They got out of New York and went down to Georgia. And they have a beautiful clubhouse there. And it was called the Jekyll Island Club in those days. And it was in that clubhouse that a group of 7 of these wealthiest people in the world went in 1910, and under conditions of extreme secrecy, they created the Federal Reserve System there, not in Washington, D.C., but on Jekyll Island, away from prying eyes, away from reporters, away from any written record of the proceedings and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so when I discovered that in my early days of research, I thought, well, isn't that interesting? Why would they go to Jekyll Island? And, of course, the deeper I got into it, I discovered that they went to Jekyll Island so they could do this whole thing in secret. And then the next question is, well, why did they want to do this in secret? And the obvious answer is, well, they had something they wanted to hide.
Yeah.
They didn't want people to know.
That's right.
The next question is, well, what is that? And so you get a cascading effect of questions and answers.
Yeah.
And it became apparent to me that everything that we need to know about the Federal Reserve System really is contained in the answering of those initial questions as to why this thing was created on Jekyll Island. And so that's why I named the book what it was. Well, let's get to the chase here.
Yeah.
Why did they hold this meeting on Jekyll Island in such secrecy, and what is it that they were trying to hide? Well, in a nutshell, it was at that time that there was a great deal of concern among the American people about the concentration of economic power into the hands of a small group of these people, these billionaires, these investment firms on Wall Street. The public was becoming